Aloha and welcome to All About Adoption. My name is KRISTINE ALTWIES and I have a very special guest today. With me is LENORE Peterson.
Thanks so much for having me.
Thank you for being here. Welcome. So you and I have known each other for a very long time, longer than I wish to think about. Tell me why we met and how we met and what got you to the place of us meeting.
Well, actually, meeting you was sort of the end of a long journey. I had run into my former college roommate, and she had just had her second miscarriage in a second marriage. And she asked me what I was gonna do about children. She knew I'd always wanted to be a mom, and I was 39 at the time. I wasn't married. And she said, it's not as easy as you think. You should go talk to your doctor. And so I did. And that sort of was me embarking on the journey. By the time I met you, I had done 12 artificial inseminations over 2 years. I'd gotten pregnant and had a miscarriage. And someone had given me a fascinating book called From Infertility to Adoption that sort of had you look at why did you want to adopt, or why did you want a child? You know, did you want it to complete your partnership with your partner? I didn't have a partner. Did you want this child to look like you? I couldn't care less. But it was really about wanting to share my life with a child and to be a mom. And so that was the beginning. I had talked to an attorney about adopting a child on the mainland, and had considered that, but it was a little boy. It was a little half African-American boy, and I sort of went, I don't think I'd be really good with a boy. I still haven't figured boys out. I don't know that I can give this little African-American boy the skills he needs to live in our world. And so then I got clear that what I wanted was a girl. And I don't know if you even remember, initially I signed up for your Nicaragua program because I'm sort of fiery, I'm an Aries. I thought this would be a perfect fit. And then they closed because they didn't want non-Catholics adopting there. I had so many hurdles to get over, and it was my dear friend Amy McCullough who said, I'm adopting a Chinese girl. And I'm like, Chinese? Amy, can you imagine me with a Chinese girl? She's like, you come to a meeting. They're going to bring some of the girls. And I went to that meeting, and I have never seen more darling, smart, precious. And that was when I said, and I had met you. You were in a play at Manoa Valley Theater, and I stayed after to say hello to you and say how wonderful I thought you were. But I said, I've been meaning to call your agency. I'm interested in adoption, and you looked me right in my eye and said, if you want to make this happen, we will make it happen. And I couldn't believe it, but you were so earnest, and I thought, my God, this could be the answer to my prayers, and it was.
Everything happens for a reason.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
In adoption, I feel that very strongly when we look at the paths that people take in their lives, not always easy,
Yeah.
sometimes with lots of detours. I take a lot of solace in the idea that everyone ends up where they're meant to be, rightly or wrongly, easier or harder. And Maya and you seem to be so well matched.
It's so funny because Maya, and I hope they will show the pictures, because when I first saw her orphanage picture, I was sort of like, whoa, she just was sort of pouty and she didn't look very happy and she had these big cheeks, and I was like, yikes. And I was so worried that I would overpower her with this kid is running the show at our house. I mean, she is so powerful in herself. Mm-hmm. And, she's a paddler, she's an equestrian rider, she graduated with honors, and she's a fun, feisty, neat kid, and we do laugh because she opens her mouth and it's sort of like, here's Lenore, and it's like, wow, Maya. But so, yeah, it was a very good, and people will say, did you pick her? And I said, no, somehow God picked her for me. We got to the top of the pile and somehow a match was made, and it's really miraculous. It still is,
Do you somehow complement each other? You fill in where the other has a deficit. There's a real symbiosis there.
Yeah. I mean, it's just a really good match. We have a lot of fun together.
So it's an amazing story, and I do remember you now that you bring it up, and I'm glad that you ended up finding Maya and she ended up finding you, because I do think these things happen for a reason. But there are lots of challenges that come with being a parent, being a single parent, being a parent in a situation where your child and you don't necessarily look alike. The world isn't always kind or understanding or diplomatic.
Yeah.
Can you share with us some of the things that may have happened along the way that provided challenges?
I think probably one of the biggest challenges was not having family here. You know, Hawaii is a wonderful, wonderful place, in part because the extended family is such an important part of people's lives. I've never had, my parents were in Oregon, which is fairly close, but it's an ocean away. Luckily, I had a very, very supportive group of friends. We call ourselves the Ohana. And I mean, before she was 2 years old, I took Maya to a wedding in Greece with a group of friends. She was in the baby backpack. People were helping me out. I mean, we went on the honeymoon to Santorini. The wedding was in Crete. I mean, I didn't let the fact that I was a single mom really hold me back from doing things. I took her twice to Croatia to do peace camps in the summer with me. And we went to Italy. She had seen Italy and the Lizzie McGuire show. She's like, let's go there. I'm like, well, it is sort of in the neighborhood of Croatia. So I took her to Rome, I took her to Venice. So the challenges I've been able to get over, you know. I work at Punahou School. Punahou was very, very supportive. I was able to take 3 months leave without pay in order to bond with Maya. She was 14 months old when I got her, and I just felt like that. Not everybody does that. I felt like it was real important for me to do that. And I think in part, the fact that I had a tuition waiver and threw this little piece of paper out each year for 6 years when I started at Punahou. And I think I knew deep in my heart that that could radically change a child's life.
A good education.
Yes, absolutely. And I had that gift to give. So in addition to just loving her and whatnot, I could give her a wonderful education. And that's, I'm forever grateful to Punahou for that.
So none of that has anything to do with adoption, which is interesting, fine, cool.
Yeah.
But nothing you've just said has anything to do with adoption. It has to do with maybe being a single mom or not having family here. And that's fine, and that's maybe why it's interesting, because that is your story.
What was difficult about adoption? Well, I think initially just the cost. I mean, that was huge for me. I didn't have that money. And then you'd sort of discover that you somehow can get the money. You take a loan from the credit union or whatever, you know, that I guess you realize how badly you want it. I mean, one of the things for me was I was living in a fabulous little studio apartment at the top of Tantalus with a wonderful couple, Lee and Will Kaselka. And before I even got Maya, I needed to move to a place where she would have her own bedroom. I'm like, are you kidding me? I haven't even seen a picture of this child. This child is a figment in my imagination, and I'm giving up a place that I love to accommodate this child that I don't even really, and so a lot of it is faith, man. You know, you continue taking these steps, taking out a loan, moving to a place that will accommodate. You start to manifest this child.
The pregnancy.
Yeah.
It's the pregnancy.
Yeah, it really is. And so those were some of my challenges as a single parent, not having family nearby, not having a lot of money, not being in a settled 2-bedroom place so that I could even pass the home study, and just sort of taking one step at a time to make it happen. And then waiting. you know, because my adoption took 1.5 years, and that was after all this other stuff. So I began this journey when I was 39. When I got Maya, I was 2 months before my 45th birthday.
Super young at heart.
Young at heart, but, you know, I was really old enough to be her grandma practically. But, you know, so those were some of the challenges for me, the weight, the cost, just all of it,
Okay.
you know.
I'm always curious, as someone who advocates for open adoption and for transparency in adoption and for, you know, supporting people in finding their roots if they're interested, or, you know, supporting families in having the difficult discussions about where do I come from, where do I fit in, why did this happen, you know, who do I look like. I'm always curious to hear from parents about how they handled the discussion of adoption at home with their child.
Yeah.
And I know that your daughter had a number of friends who were adopted from China, so she had the comfort of being part of a very exclusive crowd of super awesome girls.
I think at one point Maya thought all girls were Chinese and they all had white mothers, you know, because that was our little network. But every year, I always let Maya know that she was adopted. Every year on our gotcha day, I videotaped every moment. I videotaped the handoff, the moment I had her, us taking off her orphanage clothes and tickling her tummy and calling my dad to tell him we'd finally gotten her. So, I mean, this was this epic video. And every gotcha day, she'd be like, let's put it on, you know, and we'd watch, and she's like, she'd laugh, you know, it was just, so it was always a part of it. And it really wasn't until, I think she was in Montessori. One day she came home and she said, Mom, guess what? And I'm like, what? And she's like, you Hallie. And I'm like, guess what? You Chinese. And I don't think, somebody must have said something to her. Oh, are you, I think she said, somebody asked me if I was adopted. And they said, you're Hallie. But being in Hawaii, it was really easy, and we were talking about this before, that most people just assumed I probably had a local husband. My daughter looks very Hapa, and she had a lot of questions about her genetics. And so last year before last, for her 18th birthday, I got her the Geno kit from
Ancestry.com or 23andMe or
National Geographic.
Oh, right, okay.
And she was fascinated by it. And now she still has the program, and they update the program for her. But she was fascinated. I mean, her body type and whatnot, she was like, I don't think I'm pure Chinese. And I was like, really? Turns out she's part Finnish. She has some Japanese. I mean, it was just fascinating. And she does look very Hapa. So she would very much love to find her family. I don't know that that will ever be possible for her. When she wants to go back to China, we do have the name of the orphanage and whatnot, and I've got the video showing the workers, the orphanage workers that actually were working with her.
And she knows you're supportive of that
Oh,
journey
absolutely.
and that exploration, which is so
Absolutely.
important that
Yeah.
she doesn't feel that you're threatened by it.
No, not at all. Yeah, so.
Did she ever openly grieve or mourn? Or is it something that...
No, and I've gone to some adoption conferences and whatnot where I know that some kids do. I think it was more just a questioning, you know, who are my parents? Why did they give me up? You know, and she'd say, why do you think? You know, and I'd say, and we had a beautiful, beautiful book about when you were adopted from China or whatever, that talked about the one-child law. And so that made more sense, and why they tended to keep boys, because boys took care of the parents. And the girls tended to go with the boy and take care of his parents, but no one took care of the girl's parents. And so I think that was reassuring to her to know that it wasn't something about her, that she wasn't a bad baby or not a cute kid or whatever, that it really was the politics. And because she knew so many Chinese girls, I think that made it somewhat easier too. If anything, Maya has known, I tell her, you're my dream come true. You know, I fought for you. I wanted you so badly. So she's always known that she's hugely, hugely wanted, loved, you know, and a huge part of our family. I mean, she's the baby of the family, and, you know, everybody loves her.
So how do you deal with sort of reference to birth family? I mean, I love that you call her family family. You don't even divide it into birth family and real family or adoptive family. It's family. And I love that you refer to it that way, because it's so inclusive and it's so respectful and non-threatening, you know, to you, to anyone. But how do you, or did you ever refer to birth mom growing up? Did you sort of acknowledge
I think I
to
would
her?
say Chinese mom. Your Chinese mom.
But you did sort of just bring her up from time to time.
Yeah, yeah. And I would say, you know, that was such a huge sacrifice, Maya, you know, that she made for you. And my guess is she was hoping that you would have a better life. And look at your life, you know. I mean, you know, we live in a beautiful townhouse in Kaneohe on the windward side of Oahu, you know, with those beautiful Ko'olau Mountains, you know. She paddles for Lanikai Canoe Club. She was riding dressage in the back of Waimanalo. She was going to Punahou School, you know, that she had a car when she was 16 because she got her driver's license and I wasn't giving her my car, so we had to get her a car, you know. But so, and I just said, you know, I think your family would be so glad and so pleased for you that you've had the life that they hoped for you, you know. And just, the birthday parties, you know, whether it was Build-A-Bear or the Nature Center or the Elks Club or, you know, again, she's my only kid. I'm an only mom, you know, so she has been the focus of my attention. So I think... Yeah, and I think I just tried to say to her, I think this was a huge sacrifice for your mom. And I think she would be amazed if she could see you and if she knew you. And because I work with teenagers, we oftentimes talk about if you could turn back the hands of time or if you could meet anyone. I always say I would meet Maya's mom just to tell her what a neat kid she is and what a wonderful life she has, you know? So,
I don't have the tissues, but I'm tearing up too. Let's just
yeah.
That I think that's so important for our children to understand, that we unequivocally and, you know, without condition love their birth families, because that sends the message to them also that, you know, that it's okay and that it's just part of life, and that you know, I think when children know that the adults in their lives are getting along and love each other, that gives them permission and makes it easier, you know, to express those feelings and those interests for birth family or for family. And I think it's very important for us to bring up, unsolicited by our children, reference to birth family. So that, you know, the birth family lives on with us, even when they're unknown.
Well, and I remember you asked me earlier, what about the fact that she didn't have a dad? How do we deal with that? And again, I've been so lucky, you know, I was able to request male teachers for her. Whether it was Mike Taylor, her second or third grade teacher, or whether it was John Fody, her paddling coach, you know, the men, or Uncle Mike Auerbach, Uncle Mike DeMatos, you know, men that have stepped up and been wonderful role models for her and have given her that sense of someone to guide her, you know. She had a really tough time. She's in college now and was very, very homesick. And sort of wanted to come home, and she and I were in dialogue about it, and she went and talked to her paddling coach. And he said, you need to stick it out, Maya. You're bigger than this. You can handle this. And she came home and she said, well, I can't drop out. And I said, oh, really? Why not? She said, John Fody won't let me.
It helps to have a village behind you, right?
Oh, it helps to have a village. And I saw him several months ago, and I just said, I don't know whether you ever got my text, but thank you so much. You know, that came at a really important time for her to hear it from somebody other than me, somebody she respected and admired. So So there, you know, we've been able, and I know that's an important thing, is for her to have male role models, and she's had some really good ones.
Great. Yeah, you've done a wonderful job.
Well,
You
I
had good
tried.
material to work with.
Yes, I did have good material to work with, easy material to work with. Yeah.
Let's talk a tiny bit about the super fun topic of grief and loss and mourning, because I think that's a really important part of adoption, and I think it's easy to get, you know, seduced by these happy thoughts and these very important, you know, memories that you're sharing that are really, in Maya's case, such a big part of who she is. There has been a lot of happiness, and there has been a lot of triumph. But for people watching, we want to make sure that we're always, you know, instructive, and that we're advocating for all aspects of the adoption process and the life process when it comes to creating families. We don't want to overlook grief and loss on all sides. That, you know, the children who are adopted may be experiencing it and may not be comfortable expressing it, may not know to express it, may not know what's going on with them. It can come out in quirky ways if it's not addressed. For the parents who don't give birth but who adopt or raise children in foster care, there may be unresolved grief or loss around not having carried a child. You mentioned you had a checklist and you had a great book that seemed to have helped you.
Yes, from infertility to adoption. When I got pregnant, I was overjoyed. You know, my sister-in-law sent me what to expect when you're expecting, and my parents sent me a bouquet of flowers, and this was 6 weeks into the pregnancy. Well, by 8 weeks, the pregnancy was over. And I was pretty devastated. I was very disappointed. I decided to do 6 more inseminations. None of them worked. And I had said to myself I'd do 12. I'd do it for a year. Well, because of summers and traveling and whatnot, it stretched to 2 years. At that point, I was in my early 40s, and I really felt like, well, I wasn't sure what was going to happen. There was a part of me, my initial response was, maybe God just, this isn't what's meant to be. I'm not meant to be a parent. And then somehow that book came to me, From Infertility to Adoption. And as I looked at why I wanted to be a parent, you know, to share my life with a child and to have that, my mother loved being a parent. My stepdad loved being a parent. You know, I was just very loved.
And you work with kids, so it was
and I work with kids. Yeah, it just. But did I have to mourn it? Maybe it was good that there was a long waiting period before the adoption, because like I said, it was a year and a half before I got Maya, from the time I sort of signed on the dotted line. Yeah, but
sounds like it was just a naturally occurring process for you, the intellectual, emotional process of sort of digesting and accepting things.
Yeah, and I think you know, I would imagine I have so many friends that have adopted, both couples and singles. Even when they show you that picture, you bond with that picture. I mean, by the time they handed me Maya, I was in hook, line, and sinker. I mean, I would have thrown myself in front of a bus for her at that point. You know, I was all in. You know, this was really my daughter. This was our family. You know, and I say to her, thank you so much. You made us a family, Maya. You know, I got her, and then we got the cat, and now it's the 3 of us, you know. So you work through that. You know, my life has turned out very differently than I imagined. I always had boyfriends in high school and in college and whatnot, and I never got married, you know, and that still is sort of like, gosh, that's so weird. But life is life, you know, and I'm really glad I pushed on, and this was, you know, I've never regretted, not for one moment, this decision. I mean, even when it's been hard financially or emotionally, or we're going through stucknesses or whatever. And that's the same. Just because she's my dream come true doesn't mean we always get along. We don't fight. We fight, you know. But I've never for 1 minute regretted the decision to adopt her. I mean, I can't imagine my life without her.
And that's parenthood, I guess,
Yeah.
through the
Yeah.
good times and the bad.
Yeah.
Being in it for the sake of parenting and not for something else.
Yeah.
It's really
Yeah.
about the unit,
Yeah.
not the individuals.
And her victories are my victories, and her disappointments and sadness, you know, you just, that's how you are with your child, I think. So, yeah.
Wow. Well, that is a good place to end, even though I'm sorry we have to end, because it's really interesting hearing your story, and
Well,
I
thank
think
you.
anyone watching will have learned something very
Well,
important.
thank you for making this dream happen to so many people, many families. You know, I know that it's not always easy for the organization, and I just have nothing but praise for Hawaii International
Well, we
Child.
couldn't do it without parents like you,
Yeah.
so thank you.
Yeah.
You help us to make sure that the children that we come into contact with have families, which is so important for a child to be raised in a loving family
Yeah.
with the consistency and the security of knowing this is it and these people are here for me through good times and bad, no matter what. That's really what is important. So
Yeah.
thank you.
Thank you.
This has been All About Adoption. My name is KRISTINE ALTWIES. With me today was my fabulous guest, LENORE PETERSON. Thanks to OLELO Studios and our wonderful producer, Chris Castagnaro. Until next time.